Hi there, welcome back for another episode of Dave's Desk Bible Basics. Today we're looking at the letter to Philemon. So Paul is writing to Philemon probably around AD 60, and the letter is actually carried along with his letter to the Colossian church, so it's carried with Colossians, and it's an instruction to Philemon and to Philemon's household in how to treat and relate to a chap called Onesimus. And through reading the letter we kind of learn Onesimus' story. Onesimus, whose name is useful, has proved himself to be unuseful as a slave. So Onesimus is the property of Philemon, but Onesimus for some reason didn't take to being someone else's property and has fled. Philemon has taken things from the household, not that he would have had any of his own things, so stealing from Philemon would have been just taking his own clothes, and he's run away. But at some point he's met with Paul, he's come to faith, and presumably guided by Paul has agreed to return to Philemon, who is also a Christian and a Christian family. And the letter is very much how Paul is stopping Philemon putting Onesimus to death, because what's happened would typically have resulted, or could easily have resulted, in Philemon killing Onesimus, because he was his property and he'd run away, and that was fine, except it isn't, and it wasn't. And so Paul writes very clearly, and he uses a very delicate Roman rhetorical style. It's written in a very light-hearted tone. The use of word play between Onesimus' name being useful, but he was useless, and now maybe he be useful to you. And it uses that classical way. Paul builds rapport through the letter, then he writes persuasively, persuades the mind, and finally he moves the emotions. But at its core, it's a challenging letter for us, because it doesn't just say slavery is wrong, free him. And the fact that the New Testament doesn't declare slavery is wrong is something that caused the church to make some fairly significant errors, because people like me who wear dog collars and preach in churches said no, slavery is part of God's order for things. And clearly it isn't. Clearly it's not right that one person feels they can own another. And I think that's Paul's intention in this letter, is to highlight that it's not right for Philemon to think he has any ownership over Onesimus, but rather for him to realise that they both belong to Christ. And I think the reason the Bible doesn't express it more clearly is that slavery just was the reality in which they lived, much in the same way as credit card debt is just how we live, or mortgage debt, or student loan debt. You know, we're used to living in a world of credit that wouldn't have been something that Jewish people at this time, and the time of this letter were written, would have been comfortable with. And so I think it's good for us to realise that as we look at the world around us, to ask ourselves, are there things that the world says are fine, the world says are right, the world says are good, that actually God says aren't good? And are we able to look at the world through the spiritual eyes that we're given, and have them be open to the mistakes that our societies are making? I'd encourage you to read through that whole letter. It's really very short. There's not many times when you can reread a whole book of the Bible several times to yourself, but this is a good one to reflect upon what Paul is saying, why he's saying it, and what it means for us. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.